Hello everyone, my name is Michael Nash and I am an 8th grade social studies teacher up in Ellington, Connecticut. And I'm excited to be able to come down to Monroe for a second time and talk with all you guys about how to flip your classroom. So the purpose for this particular video is just to sort of get everyone on the same page as far as what a flipped classroom is. Many of you probably have heard of it before, some of you may even be doing it, but just so we don't have to spend time in our session on Monday talking about what a flipped classroom is, we'll do that in this video, which will allow us to do more with part 2, which is how to use technology and how to flip your classroom to transform teaching. And then if we have time at the end, I may give a short demonstration on how to actually create a video as far as software goes, but we'll see if we get to that. So let's begin with talking about what a flipped classroom is so that we all have a baseline understanding of this so we can have a more deep and thorough discussion on Monday. So first of all, I want to start by saying that there is no blueprint to a flipped classroom. Every teacher kind of does it a little bit differently, but I believe that there are some core beliefs that are present in every flipped classroom. The first and probably the most important is that teachers that flip their classroom have a core belief that face-to-face time with students is really important and precious. We never have enough of it. And because this face-to-face time is so important, we should be doing something other than lecturing to our students. So teachers that flip their classroom think lecture in class is not the best way to spend the time with students. The other big discovery that teachers that flip their classroom have had is that students do not need a teacher present to learn new content. Thanks to the internet and thanks to lots of different new technologies, content delivery can be done elsewhere. So before the internet, students had to come to a brick and mortar building to learn stuff. Now they don't have to, so there's really no walls to the classroom. Thirdly, I have found, and many teachers have found, that when a student practice a new skill, like they're doing writing or they're practicing a new math equation, it's really important that there is a qualified master of that content present with them to make sure that they're doing it correctly, to offer encouragement, to give them some feedback and some next steps as they're doing the skill on the spot. So rather than having students practice these skills at home when there is no necessarily content expert, it's really important to have the teacher present when students are practicing those skills. And technology can be used to do all three of these things. So that's where the flipped classroom and videos and the internet comes in. So these, I would say, are the 4 real core beliefs of flipping the classroom. And how teachers do these things is very different. But in a flipped classroom, I would say that these things are all happening. Okay, so moving on here. So the main difference in a flipped classroom to a traditional classroom is that in a flipped classroom, the teacher does not use their class time to talk about content. Or at least not to lecture to students. Instead, this content is presented to students differently. In most cases, teachers present this content through self-made videos or screencasts, kind of like the one that you're seeing here. Nothing fancy, nothing, it's pretty simple. You just kind of record your screen and you talk a little bit. So it sort of takes the lecture and it moves it into electronic format that's delivered on the internet for students to watch on their own. Many teachers also have their students create these tutorials, so after students master content, they can then create the screencast or the video for other students to watch. Teachers, this is probably the second most common one, teachers can use videos from other sources. YouTube has lots of different videos on pretty much everything that teachers that, real good experts have made. There's also sources like Khan Academy and BrainPop that have, even TED Ed now has great resources. So there's lots of professionally produced videos that you can borrow and have students watch. There's always the option to put web quests or text sets out there on the internet and have students navigate through those, but I haven't seen that done on a large-scale basis for teachers. And then finally, you can even have an expert in the field, someone like a doctor or a museum curator. If you're able to get them to Skype or FaceTime in and record that conversation, that's a great way to deliver content as well from somebody different. So teachers that flip their classroom usually use one or maybe a variety of these different methods to deliver content, but you won't see teachers in a flipped classroom delivering content via lecture in front of all the students all at once. Okay, so once you have your students watching the video, now they come into your classroom and class looks completely different. You don't necessarily have rows of desks where students are facing the teacher. Instead, you have a much more student-centered looking classroom where kids are doing class discussions and debates, projects, experiments. Kids are working collaboratively in groups. Students who have mastered content are able to move on to some kind of extension activity. Formative assessment is present a lot more deeply and is used a lot more richly to inform the next steps. Students are working on authentic tasks, and students are practicing their skills like writing and reading a lot more often in front of the teacher. So when you take the lecture out of the classroom and instead you replace it with, blank time where you can do anything, this is the kind of stuff that I think teachers like to do with their kids, and it's a lot more fun and engaging for students. So the flipping your classroom really can be like a really fun thing to do, because now the classroom is a really engaging and enriching experience for students. Okay, so that's basically a flipped classroom. I know that was pretty brief. You have the content delivery done outside of the classroom for homework. You have students coming into classroom to practice the skills in some way. So what I would like you to think about before Monday is these two questions. What is one reason you would be excited to hypothetically try flipping your classroom? So something that you say, wow, that's kind of cool, I have this great idea. Think about that and come in with something to share with the group. And then secondly, and we'll spend a little time probably starting with the second question, what is one reason you are apprehensive to try flipping the classroom? Everyone looks at this method at first and goes, wow, that sounds great in theory, but in practice, what happens when this happens, or what happens when students don't do this or students do this? So I think whenever I've talked with teachers about this, they're usually excited about it, but also apprehensive because of the possible drawbacks. And I'd like to start our session talking as a group about these two questions. So what is one thing you're excited to try, and what is one reason you're apprehensive? Okay, so that just about wraps it up. This is kind of just a good example of an easy flip video you can make for your students. We'll talk about those two questions on Monday. I look forward to meeting you all in person. Have a great weekend.